Good morning, comrades. It is Friday, fun day, baby. Let's go. What is going on? It is time for our daily. Good morning, comrade. How are we doing today? Looks like we got G Wolf and Ginny in chat. That's good. That's good. How are we doing today? I'm having a pretty good one. I'm ready for this weekend, really. I'm thinking that I'm not again. I'm thinking we're gonna do shows this weekend. We're gonna probably get used to doing shows on the weekend, and this is like not an announcement. Just Peachy, that's good. This is not an announcement, but it's like a prediction for how things are gonna look. I'm doing good. I'm doing pretty good. Just back from vacation. I haven't really gotten back. Today's like my first day back at work. It's gonna be like one of those 1-day weeks, which is fine. I can use a little bit extra, money after going on vacation, so that's good. But yeah, like I was saying, the the prediction I'm gonna make for when I go back to like work is that we're gonna do mostly weekend shows going forward and then some off time streams. So like when school returns, I've been talking with Robert about this. We're probably gonna end up doing Saturdays. Saturdays and Sundays for our regular stream time. And then we'll see if we can find like a night, like a night or two a week, where we can also do it. But that part's like the mostly in flux. But I'm pretty sure we're gonna do the weekends. So yeah. How about y'all? How are y'all doing? How are you? I got my covfefe. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good on this end. So yeah. Joe Biden's already bungling Cuba. I mean, we all know that the reason that Cuba is, well, part of the reason, like Cuba's having some, protests right now that are anti-government. They're being, framed. I'm not exactly sure what the actual motivation for them are. They could be State Department funded. They could not be. Regardless of that, like the answer to like what the U.S. should actually do is end the embargo on Cuban goods to the U.S. and from the U.S. And all of its trade partners. But that's never really on the table, is it, for Joe Biden? No, 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 no. What does Joe Biden think that is wrong with Cuba? Not the fact that it's been isolated from, the rest of the world for 60 years. That's got anything to do with it. It's because what?
Well, let me start off by answering the question relative to Haiti and Cuba. And communism is a failed system, universally failed
wait,
system.
it's because communism is a failed system. Oh. Oh, that's what it is. It's got nothing to do with the fact that the United States has done everything in its power for the past 40, 50, 60 years to try and eliminate Cuba, hundreds of attempts on the life of Castro. And I'm not like, this isn't even like I'm not even getting in my defense of Castro. Like, this is just the most basic. You're saying that Cuba doesn't have goods, or Cuba has failed because communism is a failed system. However, you've been intentionally trying to destroy Cuba for 2 generations. And you still can't do it. But as soon as they have protests, you're just like, bam, all right, cool. It's got nothing to do with ending the blockade. It's got nothing to do with like actually helping Cubans solve the problem, other than replacing the leadership. That's where you go with it. That's what you do when you're Joe Biden.
And
well, let's finish the video.
I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute, but that's another story. With regard to whether.
All right. So he's basically saying that communism has failed and socialism is like not a good substitute or whatever. That's not really particularly useful in terms of how to like frame anything. He doesn't define what he's talking about. He's just basically, oh, look at that, communism failed. Let's basically overthrow the current regime. But anyway, he does that to appease the right wing, which is like virulently. I mean, obviously, Joe Biden agrees with them, but he wants to score some kind of points as well. He wants to get some kind of credit with the conservatives. And what do the conservatives do every single time the Democrats do that thing?
No professor in the country can say that. So I give him kudos for that, but for that, no professor in the country can say that. So I give him kudos for that, but he doesn't act like it's a failed system because he keeps trying to take our guns, our health care, and our freedom of speech. So give him a C- on that.
He gave you health care, but
Not
the
me.
Obama administration,
No.
because you can afford
He took it
private
away
health
from a
care.
lot of people, and now he's trying to take over the private system with the public option.
20 million.
I don't want government health care, okay?
You can afford not to.
No one else wants government health care.
Yeah, a lot of millions want it. Yeah, but
no one wants government health care. It's terrible. Everybody knows it. So, also, I was surprised.
So what always happens is the conservatives are just never going to give him credit. It's never good enough. Anytime he like leans a little bit towards their now obviously Joe Biden's fine with this one because it's not something that's important to him. But like the idea that Joe Biden like would use even that as an excuse, the idea that he's trying to like appeal to these realities of the U.S. political system, because the conservatives are like just gonna eat his lunch no matter what. I mean, or I'm sorry, they're gonna eat his lunch if he says that he's gonna like not condemn Cuba or whatever. It's just complete and utter bullshit. They're gonna fuck him up anyway. So they're gonna give him like minimal credit for being like, oh wow, nice job being anti-communist for 5 seconds, and then also that's not good enough. We actually still hate you. So there you go. There's actually an article that I want to read. It had a little bit more of the speech in there. But Choki, I sent that link for Tuesday's show with Harvey K. That should not have gotten taken down. If it is taken down, I can still see it. So yeah, President Joe Biden said Thursday that the United States is considering whether it can take steps to restore internet access in Cuba in wake of the protests against the government. So first off, what does this is the U.S. already talking about getting involved in another country. So we talked yesterday about the U.S. getting involved in potentially getting involved in Haiti. That would be extremely bad. But like the U.S. is just looking for reasons to jump in, to interfere, to intervene in other countries. It's not new. Quote, they've cut off internet access to the internet. We are considering whether we have the technological ability to reinstate that access, Biden told reporters at a joint press conference on Thursday with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis earlier Thursday, one of the enemies, sent a letter to Biden requesting federal assistance to. So Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida, not the governor of Cuba. Just remember that. But there is a large refugee, emigre population of wealthy Cubans that fled, that were friendly with the Batista, the American friendly Batista regime, and were the oligarchy essentially. They fled, and now they're living it up in the U.S. and they're like the most anti-Cuba, anti-communist people. So those are the people that are motivating Ron DeSantis. That plus opportunity, just general opportunity. But that's the cover he can use. Anyway, he sent a letter to Biden requesting federal assistance to provide internet access to people in Cuba. Senator Marco Rubio from Florida also made a similar request of Biden. Marco Rubio is one of those people as well. He's Cuban himself, and also he is, from one of those emigre families. Quote, technology exists to provide internet access to Cuba remotely using the innovation of American enterprise and the diverse industries here. So, okay. I find it very funny that the U.S. suddenly cares that like Cubans have internet access when they've never when again, you've been doing an embargo of goods on Cuba for 60 years, but you want to like drop in internet access? That's odd. That's weird. But okay. Using the innovation of American enterprise and the diverse industries here, DeSantis wrote. Similar to the American efforts to broadcast radio into the Soviet Union during the Cold War in Europe, the federal government has a history of supporting the dissemination of information into Cuba for the Cuban people through radio and television Marti, located in Miami. So essentially what they're thinking this is like basically like a radio free like Europe or sort of thing, or like dropping the blue jeans and rock music behind the scenes of behind the in Russia, like this idea of like all they need in Cuba is our American culture or our like capitalist culture, consumer culture, to win over the people of Cuba, which is like ridiculous. Goods can be expected. Hope you're doing Oh, okay. You're doing good. Good you're doing, G-Wolf. I thought you were talking about the goods coming in. Anyway, Biden said Thursday that the government of Cuba has failed its citizens and rejected communism as a failed system. We already saw that. We already talked about that part. So Biden sucks. And unfortunately, so now is a day. All right. So now is a good time to provide a measured critique of something that I also saw. And this was a tweet by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, I'm not going to do the thing where I just like slam her entirely, largely because, well, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Let's read this statement from AOC and let's see what you guys think. And we can sort of work things out from there. Good morning, Wizard Bread Book. So earlier statement, Cuban protest was chopped up via several tweets and hard to follow. Here's in full with Spanish being posted underneath. We stand in solidarity with the Cuban people and condemn this oppression of the... Okay, bad lead. Cringe. condemn the suppression of the media, speech, and protest. That's not a good start at all. We also call for the end to the U.S. embargo and additional Trump-era restrictions that are profoundly contributing to the suffering of Cubans. That's good. So if you got rid of the first part, or even if you flipped the second part behind the first part, that might be acceptable. Let's look at this. Oh, no. Statement from AOC on demonstrations in Cuba, quote, "We are seeing Cubans rise up in protest for their rights like never before. We stand in solidarity with them, and we condemn the anti-democratic actions led by President Diaz-Canel." Okay, bad. Not doing that. The suppression of the media, speech, and protest are all gross violations of the civil rights. I mean, that's technically true, but again, that should come after you talk about the U.S. embargo. We also must name the U.S. contribution to Cuban suffering. Okay. The word contribution doesn't really like, it doesn't really capture the like scale of the US's interference in Cuba. So, okay, not great. The U.S. contribution to Cuban suffering, our 60-year-old embargo. That's good. Last month, once again, the U.S. voted overwhelmingly to call on the United States to lift its embargo on Cuba. The embargo was absurdly cruel and, like too many other U.S. policies targeting Latin Americans, the cruelty is the point. That's true. I outright object the Biden administration's defense of the embargo. It is never acceptable for us to use cruelty as a point of leverage against everyday people. So, all right, here is, I mean, again, it's more than a contribution. It is like a primary factor. So yes, this is a thing to critique and be critical of AOC about. Does this mean that AOC is like the enemy or anything like that? I don't think so. If you think so, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But what needs to end up happening in this kind of a statement is all of this shit in the beginning, either get rid of it or put it after you talk about the embargo. The leading contributing factor to all of this stuff, the number one big A problem is the embargo. That's what it is. Period. There's more. Oh, it's in Spanish. Okay, I'm not going to read it in Spanish. Yeah. And the embargo. That's the answer. That's the answer. That's the answer. What? Okay, that's not good. All right. And the embargo. Like literally everything starts and everything ends. Like that's the whole problem when it comes to, I mean, like, when it comes to this. Like, you can talk about how the government's repressive, and that might be true. I mean, if you're saying that the U.S. government's not repressive, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we have a lot of technical, speech. AOC is the enemy in the sense that anyone supporting a capitalist state is. At least AOC is trying to materially improve people's lives, though she is a benevolent Chicago like some Dems and all Republicans. Yeah, I mean, like, she's a social democrat. She's not like, she's not. All right. This is, I love having this conversation because it actually makes me like define some of my terms. And when I say that, so she's in the government, and that's important, that to have some kind of leverage point that essentially is responsive to an actual, emerging U.S. left. Now, we don't really have that in the sense that like, we don't have the ability to overthrow the government or overthrow capitalism presently. I don't even know what that would look like right now. However, in order to, the Congress is essentially a front in the class war, and she is one of the people, along with Bernie Sanders and um you love AOC the Great. I mean, I'm not going to go like she's definitely deserving criticism. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That are at least like, yeah. Well, I even think that the idea of that's another point. Wizards, um, it can be the graveyard of social progress. I'm definitely like, I'm not. This is difficult to talk about like on the fly, but there almost needs to be like some kind of like social democracy is not like the goal. However, like the threat of the possibility of those of those kinds of reforms, those like reformist type approaches, can essentially provide a crux by which the ruling class will have to respond and provide concessions that they don't want to provide, and then that essentially creates weaknesses by which they can be attacked on other fronts. So that's sort of my take. Like I want to hit from all sides. But yeah, that's sort of the point. I mean, I think the key right now, what people should be doing is organizing in their unions. You just last time we had Gains for Labor, we were there were union members throwing bombs, not advocating for anything, just some history. Okay. I mean, that's fine. I mean, US the situation we find ourselves in America in is pretty repressive. I mean, like the idea of any kind of violent uprising or armed revolution right now is like so not real to me. If you know what I mean. Like it's not like it doesn't even feel like it's on the table. However, if that reality changed, I would have different thoughts for sure. Morning watermelon pickle. All right. So, what else we got today? Oh, Bernie led with the. Well, he didn't lead with it, but he had a better tweet than AOC. Originally, her comments on the embargo were 3 deep. It's limiting to only view propaganda that deed as violence. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's the only. That's the only thing. How crunchy of an anarchist you are using that term. That's. I mean, that's just old school. That's just old school. I mean, I don't consider myself to be an anarchist. However, like I do have agreements with many of the anarchists that I what I when I talk with anarchists actually, and I had a good conversation with one recently. Their sort of like end picture of what they would call anarchism is what I would call communism, right? And I think where the biggest so that's like basically a like vocabulary disagreement. And God, anarcho Bidenist, come on now. I think some of the disagreement, and it's not even like an irreconcilable disagreement. I think that there's a lot that can be built on. Is like the path to getting to that place. Oh, I mean, it's tactical and it's like literally just the words that we use. Like I genuinely think that a lot of the problem is that like when somebody says a word like when they say anarchism, like I basically like after having a discussion and it's always nice to have people define their terms in these conversations. But like when I'm talking with somebody who calls himself an anarchist, they'll define what they say. Very often they'll talk about the idea of a structuralist society or society, a structuralist society which sounds a lot to me like the Marxist idea of like the withering away of the state, which is like an end stage of communism, right? That is what communism is. However, like the thing is, how do you get to that point? And you know, I definitely do believe that there's needed to be a period of dictatorship of the proletariat, which does and has existed in places like Cuba, places like Venezuela. So this is what we kind of need to look at, and it's going to look authoritarian. You say Anson's are pretty parallel to Leninists, but the majority of anarchists advocate for doing anarchism to achieve anarchism. That said, you're all the mass line. Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's a lot of agreement between your perspective and mine on that. And again, like I think that when I'm really glad you brought this up, and I'm really happy to talk to you about this because like unfortunately, and I think that well-intentioned people, well-intentioned leftists can often take their experiences dealing with their worst experiences, I guess you could say, and everybody knows like an annoying communist or an annoying laborer person or an annoying anarchist or whatever, and take that experience and sort of like apply that to essentially all people who call themselves by a similar thing. And I think that that's kind of unfair. I mean, I think it's really unfair to be honest, and it's not particularly helpful in terms of like moving forward in like actually constructing a working class, a working class alternative or a challenge to capitalism. So like I'm definitely like I take the Big Ten approach. However, I try to make sure that when I am, critical of things, I'm precise about it. And also I don't want to make things personal unless there's an actual personal problem with an actual individual, which is literally a case by case basis. And that has come up as well, but that's not as important. I don't know. Do I feel like am I way out of line on that one? I think I'm being fairly balanced that take. You went through a lot of labels and settled on communist since it's the base of everything else. I mean, like, I don't go around saying that I identify as a, XYZ communist, this, that, or whatever. Like, I don't think that's particularly, like, that's not how, like, people work with people and deal with people. And, like, that's sort of how relationships build. Like I don't understand, like, obsession with those kinds of, like leading with those kinds of things. But like talking about the ideas and talking about like what you believe in and then summarizing them into those kind of categories makes a lot more sense. Yeah, you use it to keep yourself straight in your head. That makes sense. That does make a lot of sense. You're not a communist because you want bigger government. I'm a communist because you want smaller. Yeah, smaller capitalism. That's pretty good. You don't like the term libertarian socialist much? Why not? Choking on ashes. I'm interested in that. I mean, I kind of don't know what it means, other than like anarchist. It's like somebody who wants to like be an anarchist, but doesn't want to call themselves an anarchist, right? I love these kinds of comments. There's a big difference between people who are tired of labels and people who don't know what they mean because they're a baby. Yeah, no, that's true. Oh my God. Like again, those are often the people that lead with labels though, because they're looking for an identity. Libertarian socialists are left and mini-anarchists. Yeah. Visit C4SS if you want more libsoc content. What is C4SS? I don't know what that is. Center for a Stateless Society. There are no anarchist systems. Okay. Hey, Ginny. Wait, aren't you already on Twitch? Everyone who's in the socialist is annoying, but I get along. I try to get along with people. You got tired of ANCOM, syndicalist, anarchists, etc. Your point of view is better than yours. Yeah, I mean, like, here's a good example. Like, I don't know if people in here are familiar with the guys, Street Fight Radio. They are a radio show out of, they're a radio show out of Columbus. They're really cool dudes. They call themselves anarchists. They've called themselves anarchists for many, many years, and they, talk primarily about like how much work is terrible and how jobs. I mean, like I remember years ago, Brian, one of the guys out there, he worked at a restaurant and talked about the horrible like ways that customers and bosses treated people, and they essentially essentially they basically just talked about like labor stuff and union stuff and how fucking shitty work is, and they had union organizers on to talk about organizing unions, and it wasn't even IWW. It was like I remember because one of these people are my friend. They had a friend of mine on, and she is a union organizer for a fairly mainstream labor union, and that's exactly right. That's like these things, these ideas are extremely like reconcilable. Like those are anarchists that people that call them anarchists that I don't even view that as like anarchism. I see that as just people who are. I mean, I don't want to gatekeep anybody. If you call yourself what you want to call yourself, if it makes sense. However, like I don't see those guys as anarchists first. I see those guys as like dudes that are like very funny and that have a connection with working class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like that's people I can fuck with, There are, of course, anarchists who identify as libsocialists. For the distinction between anarchists and libsocialists, libsocialists don't necessarily want to eliminate all the state. Okay, that's helpful. Some personal bias. More younger leftists in the UK identify as anarchists when I was younger, so that might be it. That's my understanding of libertarian socialists. Okay. There are, of course, anarchists who identify. Yeah, we just did that one. There's definitely some personal stuff in your bias. Yeah. Okay. I mean, everybody's personally biased. Every single person. Glenn Greenwald calls himself a libertarian socialist, and he has all the good takes. Greenwald is. I wish Greenwald would just stop posting and just get back to being a good reporter. Gotta take a sec to say IWW is greater than AFL. AFL lets in cops and fuck cops. I mean, yeah, that's the big problem. I mean, I think that again, I'm a member of a union that is AFL-CIO. I don't do a card with IWW. I think that I have some critiques of the way that I mean, again, I respect IWW and his tradition of the organization. However, there's a certain like one of the big disagreements that I have is that like I do think that we need contracts. We need to start getting, I think that it having staffers and things like that is more of is very important. I think it's just a difference in the way the unions are run, and the idea of one big union is absolutely necessary. I would like to see more. I would like to see a less antagonistic relationship between IWW and AFL-CIO, and also, yeah, the cops. We do need to get rid of the cops, 100%. that is going to take a lot of unraveling. There was a really great Alex Press piece, actually. On cops and unions. Let me see if I can find that. Was it in Jacobin? Where was that? Yeah, here it is. It was from June. On police reform, AFL-CIO have a lot of work to do. Good morning, S. Lane. No, I agree. I mean, I agree with the Red Book. We got to get rid of cops and cop unions. All right, here's the article I found that I was talking about. On police reform, AFL-CIO has a lot of catching up to do. And this is something that I heard a really great interview with Alex about. I think it was on the Majority Report, but I don't remember. Cops for a gang, no shit. AFL-CIO is, I mean, cops are a gang, but also so are unions, right? Like, I don't know. Like, cops are just the bad gang. I don't know. I'm just trying to I'm trying to destigmatize gangs here. AFL-CIO's new report on police reform doesn't come anywhere close to what's needed. Written largely from the perspective of police officers, it rejects calls to defund the police, embracing the failed approach of trying to weed out bad apples. Cold take. Okay, fine. You annoyed you missed the This is Revolution podcast last night. Woke up 20 minutes after they finished streaming. You got me watch the VOD. I love those guys. I love Pascal and Jason. We actually watched Pascal on Majority Report yesterday talking about Haiti. Society's at a crossroads. Simmering pot is boiling over. The system is festering, and people in positions of power are standing idly by. Let me put the link in here. This is the picture of the AFL-CIO paints in the introduction to the Public Safety Blueprint for Change, its new report on police reform. The report was written by the Labor Federation's Task Force on Racial Justice, reformed in July of 2020, as some of the largest protests in the U.S. erupted in the streets across the country following the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. Those streets included the one downtown Washington, D.C., where the AFL-CIO's headquarters is located. The building was set on fire. The incident prompted organized labor to try to clarify its position on policing. And they did, in their limited credit, show support for the protests even after the building was damaged. The task force consists of 13 unions that include police officer members. This is the problem. All right, this is the problem. Police officer members, as well as the Teamsters, SEIU, which while not part of the AFL-CIO, were invited to participate. It is led by the United Steelworkers Vice President Fred Raymond, and AFL-CIO Secretary Liz Schuler. The latter is a leading candidate to take over presidency of the Federation when Trump steps down, though a challenge from AFL-CIO President Sarah Nelson remains a possibility. As a note at the top of the report, it explains, it, quote, is written by and from the perspective of unionized law enforcement officers and leaders and endorsed by the participating unions in the AFL-CIO Task Force on Racial Justice. So that's the problem. It's written by the cop unions. So that's where they're taking. And look, this is a good part, generally, about where the AFL-CIO takes a lot of its perspective from. Generally, it will take its perspective from the workers in a given area. And unfortunately, for this one, the workers, at least the workers that are working, and I don't even call them workers necessarily, but this is the AFL-CIO's perspective, they do, right? Yeah, written by cop unions, fumes and anarchists, exactly. That's not good. That's not helpful. That's because again, the people that the cops are beating up and tear gassing and also, let's not forget, murdering are workers as well. So We need to sort of like talk about the impact that cops are, what the cops are doing to workers that are not cops. Yeah, breaking picket lines, of course. If you check out what's going on in Alabama with the United Mine Workers strike out there at the Warrior Met facility, the cops have essentially like not. I believe it was cops. I know that the cops have been breaking up picket lines and saying you can only have like 6 people or something like this at the picket lines. But also there have been instances of protesters and picketers, workers on strike being run over. So that's not good. One of the unions participating in the task force is the International Union of Police Associations. Bad. The only all police union in the 15 million member strong AFL-CIO. Police tend to prefer to organize independently, separating themselves from the labor movement and groupings such as police benevolent associations. Let them do that. Get out of the House of Labor. In these times, Hamilton Nolan wrote of a leaked draft of the report, quote, the makeup to the committee therefore lends the oh, come on, Ham, like imprimatur? What does that mean? Anybody know what imprimatur means? What the fuck, Nolan? Imprimatur, official license by the Roman Catholic Church to print an ecclesiastical or religious book. Okay. So lends the permission, the authority of the AFL-CIO's top leadership to a group made up of exclusively of those already obligated to represent police. Yes. After the scene setting, the report gets to the point, which is to build protective, positive, and trusting community relationships, and to have the working union professionals who provide public safety daily be a driving force for meaningful reforms grounded in equity, inclusion, and racial justice. If it isn't clear, these, quote, union professionals are cops, not the rest of the labor movement. Yeah. Yeah, it means like the legitimacy, essentially, the license. What the fuck, Nolan? Like, stop being such a writer. Towards this end, the task force offers recommendations, which these include the calls to increase diversity. Diversity. That's always worked. Look at the NYPD, one of the most diverse police organizations in the entire country. Still busts heads just like anybody else, possibly more efficiently than anybody else. And it also, that reminds me of like what the Israeli Defense Force likes to talk about. Yeah, more divisive. That's the hire more women guards point. But like, yeah, IDF like brags all the time about how woke they are, and yeah, they murder Palestinians left, right, center. So there you go. So increase diversity, that ain't shit. Broaden training to increase implicit bias and cultural competency. That doesn't make the cops read white fragility. Add resources to address cops, quote, mental health and differential response model. So yeah. If I just, yeah. Oh yeah, they have. If you send me a link on Discord, I will definitely play it. If y'all want to see some cringe. Here's Discord. Cat ears. Oh hell yeah. IDF cat girls. No one deserved to see that. Fine. Good morning, Samia. The cornerstone proposal is the Union Law Enforcement Accountability and Duty Standards (ULEADS) program. It's a program developed, owned, and instituted by the union, the police union, to empower local union members to speak up and take action if fellow members are violating the professional oath or abusing their power. So, essentially, like to do the thing, it's supposed to empower cops to do the thing that cops literally never ever do. Like cops are like, if one thing that they never ever do is snitch on one another. It's actually kind of shocking. Yeah, the power local union members, blah 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 blah, with the aim of helping the union, quote, weed out wrongdoers from union membership. So, in short, codes of excellence, as AFL-CIO Schuler suggested last year, how U-leads will overcome the infamous and well-established blue wall of silence inside police departments is not clear. The report offers few details. Yeah, that's gonna do nothing. That will do very little to solve this problem. There's a little bias. There's a little basis to presume that police departments would stick to such codes or even do the minimum of merely saying they agree with them. Cops routinely get infuriated with anyone in organized labor or outside it, for that matter, when they raise even the gentlest criticism of policing. Cops are babies. Cops are absolute babies. Trumpka hasn't wavered in rejecting calls to isolate police associations and kick them out of the AFL-CIO. Literally the only thing that's necessary. I mean, that's the only thing that's like would solve any of this problem, which have come from several unions, including some inside the Federation. Yet, within the days of the Federation releasing a statement on police violence last year, IUPA President Sam Cabral sent Trumpka an outraged letter in which he describes complaints about police militarization and racial profiling as ridiculous. Oh boy! Oh, what does this cringe say? Okay, Nolan's there. The recent statement when you speak of America's long history of racism and violence against black people is inflammatory and patently false. He dismisses complaints about the racial profiling and militarization of police as ridiculous and says that on a recent day in Chicago, he saw 18 murders. He saw 18 murders? None of them were shot by police. Amazing. Dude, cops are such fucking babies. Dude, cops are fucking babies. They're real, but yeah, they learn how to humiliate. Yeah. This isn't the first time this dynamic has played out. In 2014, shortly after Michael Brown's murder, Cabral wrote Trumpka to tell him to tone down. Not, Richard Trumpka, like, literally is like, he just comes across as somebody who doesn't want to make anybody mad, especially people with power. And like, this cop union fucking psycho is just like sending him screaming letters like, you need to chill out. Like, all he's doing is acknowledge, like doing the basics of acknowledging like people's like problem. And like, I'm not a Trumpka guy, to be 100% clear, but like, he's not doing anything that's undermining cops. What's the point of avoid making people mad if you want to change things? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, that's the problem with Trumpka, right? This followed Cabral defending programs that provide military-grade equipment to local police departments, which had come under criticism in response to the Ferguson Police Department's brutal crackdown on protests. In that case, Trumpka had signed onto a letter calling for a, quote, federal czar to oversee local police forces, a move by which Cabral couldn't abide. This is how police leadership views criticism. Police culture is at every level resistant to change. It's not by chance that every internet forum for cops is full of extreme racist sentiment. Indeed, police unions have long gone on the offensive and made gains at moments when criticism of the profession is loudest. Officers spin that criticism as an attack, demanding more resources, more protections against repercussions for brutality or murder. That's right, they play the victim constantly. What did cops do to be a protected class? Like, are people forced to be cops and no one told? Yeah, no, that's the other thing too. Like, the entire like Blue Lives Matter thing is taken on as like a like an identity that it's really offensive, actually, when I think about it. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, I'm offended by this or that or whatever, but like, the idea that like that's they're an oppressed class because of the fact that they're a cop is so disgusting to me. Like, that's so gross. AFL-CIO report introduction states that there are broad agreement among organized labor that meaningful public safety reforms are needed, but this isn't true. That consensus stops at the door of your local police department. Police unions are busy backing a different type of reform. Blue Lives Matter bills, the so-called Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights that they've pushed for years. These bills cast cops as a protected class, criminalizing even the act of insulting a police officer and categorizing an attack on an officer as a federal hate crime. Codified in these reforms are measures such as a mandatory waiting period that prevents investigators from speaking to cops who shoot people for 48 hours. Are you serious? Like, you can't investigate a cop for 48 hours before like if they killed somebody? You think protect and serve refers to people, not property. Blue lives should matter less because they're protecting you at the cost of their life. I mean, cops are literally like there to protect property. Like they're like, if you kill someone, like if this was it's constantly reinforced that cops are in place to protect property. Yeah, protect and serve is vague enough. Protect and serve is vague enough that people think that, like, wow, it's almost like a Rorschach test. You can like look at it and say, the protect and serve, wow, are they there to protect and serve me? You know, and like libs, like you're saying, take it that way. 100%. All of which is to say is that where the AFL-CIO report operates as if the cops will go along with reform efforts, it is at best punting the question of how to resolve the contradictions that arise, as my colleague once put it, quote, agents of oppression into a movement founded on fighting it. This obfuscation verging on fantasy is no surprise, given there are police representative tasked with coming up with a convincing vision of how to reform themselves. But it is nonetheless striking. It's why the draft report didn't even include the word racism. The final version does, speaking twice of systemic racism. That's all right. We're about to sign off in a minute. It's also why the document rejects calls to defund the police and what may be the year's most memorable use of actually. The report states the way to improve public safety systems and service actually requires greater investment. So basically, instead of defunding the police, we should fund the police more. Comparing policing to a contaminated water system, the argument reads as if it was produced in an alternate universe where no one ever noticed the deleterious, dangerous effects of ballooning police budgets and the funneling of military-grade weaponry to local police departments. AFL-CIO leadership continues to see police unions not only as an integral part of the labor movement, which, again, if they're a part of the labor movement, they shouldn't be. They're definitely not integral, but as agents who would be invited to help shape whatever efforts to reduce the police violence labor undertakes. That is a very different perspective from the one in which it is other workers, the ones in the receiving end of traffic stops and police batons and bullets. That formulates solutions. Which side are you on? Indeed. Yeah, well written. Good job, Alex Press. She, I think, nailed it with this article. Really highlighting the limitations of the of the way, you know, AFL put that thing together, and also the outcomes. Yeah, fuck cops. All right, folks. I'm not gonna be going long today. I am gonna go ahead and send y'all over to the Twitch folks, at least, to who's on. All right, Ben's on. We'll send you to Bleep Blanc, Ben.
Afternoon show for me. I'm not going to do an after.
Oopsie doopsie. But everybody else, have a lovely day. Yeah, Alex is a great writer. I think she's fantastic. But yeah, let's go ahead and raid Bleep Blomp Ben. But yeah, you can support the show by going to patreon.com/goodmorningcomrade. You can be a supporter, much like Ty Judy, Michael H, Dan O, Jonathan H, Timothy C, Dragon Slayer 19, Andy L, Gary W, Kenneth F, Adam R, Trey M, Watermelon Pickle, and Penelope D. Thank you so much. I will be back possibly tomorrow. We'll see. No promises, but yeah, love you. Bye-bye.
I don't know if I like